The New Orleans Saints' new wide receiver group is going to change the game for the Saints offense, but how could it be impacted by Alvin Kamara's potential suspension? We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that we are free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter. You can find me over at USA Today's Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. Thanks again, as always, for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Saints. It's a Wednesday here, and we are going to be breaking down a quick look at our New Orleans Saints training camp schedule, which has been officially released. But before we get to that and break down all of the days that are going to be open to the public, the days that you should keep sort of circled on your calendar for news as well, we're going to take a look at the New Orleans Saints wide receiver room. The New Orleans Saints made some big moves at wide receiver over the course of this off season, and it's going to absolutely change the game. The way that the New Orleans Saints offense is going to operate in 2022 should be absolutely night and day from what it was in 2021. What has led to that? Well, this New Orleans Saints team saw itself go in the books in 2021 as the 32nd ranked team when it comes to passing yardage, only 30th in terms of passing attempts as well. So those two things do correlate. But even on a per pass basis, the Saints were not near the top of the NFL as they usually are. But what they did do very well in the passing game was score touchdowns, nearly a top 10 team in passing touchdowns in 2021. And a lot of that comes from red zone efficiency. They were one of the most efficient red zone teams in the NFL. And of course, a good defense that started them off with good field position, oftentimes over on the offensive side. But this year in 2022, moving the chains is not going to be as tall a task as it was for the Saints in 2021. Last year, they were amongst the bottom half of the NFL when it came to third down conversion rate, with Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry expected to be on the field for this New Orleans Saints team this year, along with Jameis Winston, Alvin Kamara, so on and so forth. They should have an easier time moving the chains and getting longer drives established on a per play basis or on a per drive basis. The Saints didn't string together many long drives last year. This year in 2022, we should get back to seeing more of those double-digit 7-8 minute drives that they can chew off the clock and that they can put together at the beginnings of games. One of the other things that we hardly saw them do at all in 2021 is score points on an opening drive. That is something you should also expect to see change for the New Orleans Saints going into this season. And it's not just about Michael Thomas returning. It's not just about the possession game that comes with a guy like Jarvis Landry. The Saints also now have two players that can take the tops off of defenses, potentially three, depending upon how the roster shakes out in terms of wide receiver numbers. But when you look at the wide receiver room right now, in terms of your deep threats, your field stretchers, your big play machines, Chris Olave, Deontay Hardy. Both of those guys are already picking up or have already picked up in Deontay Hardy's case. And remember, Deontay Hardy, not Deontay Harris, changed his last name last year in order to honor his stepfather. He and Jameis Winston already built a ton of momentum last season. Now they'll look to carry that into 2022. Chris Olave coming in as the Saints' top rookie. They traded to make sure that they got an additional first-round pick at the beginning of this year's draft, which they used on Chris Olave, as well as Trevor Penning over at the left tackle spot. Hopefully, he'll be the starter there. If not the end of the world, though. But Chris Olave comes in. They also moved up again to go and grab him to make sure that they could get him at 11 in this year's draft. He is now going to be the big play threat, the big play machine, and the big play manufacturer here all throughout the 2022 season. He's right now second best odds for the New Orleans Saints, but second best odds across the NFL to be Offensive Rookie of the Year as well. So these New Orleans Saints wide receivers that are coming in, just the top four, end up changing the way that this team will look in 2022. The passing game is going to be very different. They'll be able to move the ball. They're going to move the chains. They're going to convert third downs. They're going to be able to take more shots downfield with more deep threat players. By the way, that third deep threat player that I started to mention would be guys like either Dejon Dixon, who might not be the fastest guy in the world, but does a really good job stacking and creating natural separation using acceleration and deceleration. But then also Alvin Winston is somebody that Jameis Winston even called his cousin during training camp last year. And so he's somebody else that could potentially step into that role and be another deep threat for this team. And maybe Marquez Callaway, who we saw attack downfield quite a bit as well. But I don't think that it stops there. I want to go back to Michael Thomas for just a moment, because I don't think that Michael Thomas, assuming that his return is one that gets him back, let's even just say 2016, his rookie year level of production when he was still adjusting to the NFL, still learning the scheme, still learning the playbook, all of that, and went off for 92 catches for over 1,000 yards. You get that level of production from Michael Thomas, you're very happy, right? And I don't think that that's outside the realm of possibility. I don't think that that's an outrageous thing to ask for, especially because with Jameis Winston, I'm very curious to see if Michael Thomas's game gets a little bit more vertical and gets back to where it was 2016, 2017, and even parts of 2018. If you're able to now take Michael Thomas and turn him into a 3-level threat, or utilize him as a 3-level threat, you don't have to turn him into anything, right? He just has to be back to his level of production like he was his rookie season, back to his talent as a route runner, his crispness as a route runner, his subtlety as a route runner. If you can get all of those pieces back, he can threaten at all 3 levels. But now you can take advantage of what he can offer you downfield. How does that change the impact of the New Orleans Saints offense? Think about this idea to where you have guys like Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave that you can utilize in at least the intermediate area of the field. Chris Olave, all 3 levels. Deontay Hardy, all 3 levels. And then you add and expand Michael Thomas's offensive game a bit. It gives you an opportunity to be able to draw attention elsewhere, or draw more attention to Michael Thomas, even as a 3rd-level threat, which opens up more opportunities for other players. Guys like Juwan Johnson, who I kind of subtly mentioned in yesterday's episode, which was all about Juwan Johnson needing more targets in 2022, that he bulked up. If you haven't seen it yet, he has bulked up. So he is going to be a little bit more tight end looking in 2022, but now he gets opportunities, and guys like Adam Troutman and Alvin Kamara get opportunities as well. If you're able to expand Michael Thomas's game back into being that 3rd-level threat and make defenses play that honestly by actually taking advantage of it. And with Jameis Winston at the helm, there's absolutely no reason to believe that you won't be able to take advantage of players that are getting open 20-plus yards down the field. Now, I mentioned some of the elements of the New Orleans Saints game that you want to see improve: 3rd downs, extended drive, things like that. So we'll be watching all of that all throughout the season once it begins. But even before that, this wide receiver room is going to make some noise. But it's going to be impacted a little bit around what happens with Alvin Kamara. His court hearing is set for August. It doesn't mean that we're going to find resolution at the time in the legal process, certainly not in the NFL's process, which won't do anything until the legal process is settled. But whatever happens with Alvin Kamara could certainly impact how the New Orleans Saints group their wide receivers. We'll talk about Alvin Kamara's impact on the wide receiver room as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Listen, sometimes life comes at you fast, so it's always good to be prepared. And what if present you could do a little favor for future you down the road, and maybe even ask for something like borrowing a little bit of cash? Well, now you can get that done with Dave. The Dave app is an online banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with what they call extra cash. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app and are already using it to get the financial relief that they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and you need a little bit of extra help, download the Dave app today and get a helping hand from future you, for future you, from past you, however it is that you want to look at it. There's no interest, no credit check needed at all. Just download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for extra cash, get that account, and you can get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, make sure you go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees do apply, and banking is provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. Future you will thank you. All right, family, continuing on today's episode of Locked On Saints. Thanks as always, being a Locked On Saints, your first listen of the day, every day. Which NFL stars move betting lines the most starting July 18th next Monday and my mama's birthday. Locked On is going to give you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th at Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure you go and check that out. But we thank you very much for being here with us again for another episode of Locked On Saints. I realized that I mentioned a couple of things in the previous piece about how the New Orleans Saints offense performed poorly in third down conversion, yards per play, as well as plays per drive, but I didn't tell you what the numbers were. So let me tell you what the numbers are real quick, because sometimes we make mistakes in life, and then we can help each other out here. So the New Orleans Saints had a 35.45% third down conversion rate in 2021. That was 30th in the NFL. Just for reference, Kansas City was best at 53.31. So the Saints at 35%, not great there. The Saints were also 26th in the NFL when it came to yards per play at just 4.9. Cincinnati was number 10, just inside the top 10, tied with a few other teams like Las Vegas, Minnesota, Philadelphia, a lot of sort of that playoff range that the Saints were in last year, and they were all at 5.7 yards per play. So the Saints sitting there at 4.9, nearly a full yard behind per play. And then in terms of yards per drive, we have to go to our friends over at Football Outsiders for this one, but the Saints 30th in the NFL, 5.7 plays per drive. Just to kind of, again, give you the frame of reference, the NFL average was 6.18 plays per drive. So the Saints about a half play behind in pace there, or just a little bit better than a half play per drive back in pace there. So not great numbers for the New Orleans Saints, but the return of Michael Thomas, the additions of guys like Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave, how that opens up the game of Deontay Hardy, Juwan Johnson, and other players that are getting being a part of the receiving game, even Taysom Hill being utilized in sort of that offensive weapon role as a pass catcher, as a ball carrier, all of that helps you in those moments, right? Because you get a little bit more of the mix and match of Taysom Hill as opposed to Taysom being under center throughout the entire time. And you have to imagine that come the fourth quarter, with all the different things that he's doing, all the different hits that he's taking and throughout, when you need to pick up a key third down on a 3rd and 1, that endurance becomes a little bit of a question mark at a certain point, right? So all of that should get better with the Saints' revamped wide receiver room. But that wide receiver room will still be impacted by somebody outside of it, because we're waiting to see what's going to happen with Alvin Kamara. Now, we're not going to necessarily have any resolution to the situation, I don't think, very soon. It's not like they're going to do the hearing in August and then we'll hear about the suspension immediately. That would at least be a few weeks down the road, if, depending upon what comes from what's just a hearing that's been rescheduled and continued and pushed now until August. Will it get pushed again? There's so many question marks around how this legal process will unfold. But depending upon what happens with Alvin Kamara, it may influence the way, or even the numbers, that the Saints keep at the wide receiver spot. So you think about the top 4 players effectively being a lock at wide receiver: Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave, Deontay Hardy. And I think maybe even Marquez Callaway should be involved in that conversation as well, as a potential lock as the 5th wide receiver. Will that be it? Will they only keep 5, or will they add a 6th? And some of that may come down to what happens with Alvin Kamara. Because you think about Alvin Kamara being out for 6 games. What other player right now presently on the roster has the ability to do everything that Alvin Kamara does? The only player that you can really think of, and even still, it's a little bit of an asterisk when you say everything that Alvin Kamara does, but in terms of somebody that can maybe be a little bit of a wrinkle player or a pass catcher out of the backfield, or start in the backfield and move out to the slot, doesn't Deontay Hardy make sense in that role as somebody that can maybe get a little bit of an AK treatment while Alvin Kamara is out? If that happens, which would make a little bit of sense, right? Just utilizing him in certain sort of play and wrinkle situations, because you're utilizing him a little bit differently, it would make sense that you would keep an extra wide receiver on the depth chart just for that time. So that opens the door for guys like Traquan Smith, Aesop Winston, Kirk Merritt, of course, Dejon Dixon, who I've been talking up, all offseason so far, who I think is going to have a fantastic camp. So I think that those players end up getting a little bit more opportunity if Alvin Kamara is out, because if Alvin Kamara ends up missing, let's just say 6 games, you're not just missing a wide receiver. You're not just missing a running back. You're effectively missing another option at wide receiver, or at least another option at pass catcher, because he'll line up and take some, routes from the backfield. He'll line up and run some routes from the slot out wide. You're going to utilize Alvin Kamara all over the field, not just as a running back. So him being out impacts what your passing game looks like as well. I'm not going to spoil what the rankings are. I talked about the top 50 that we're doing. That's all based on how players are either available or unavailable in move betting lines. I'm not going to spoil where he is, but I'm going to tell you Alvin Kamara is on that list. Alvin Kamara's value is absolutely there in terms of how people predict that he will impact games. And that's not just some guys in Vegas who, are just like being nerdy with some numbers or whatever. Like, they've got big shiny buildings over there for a reason, as my friend Matt Moscona would say. And so when you break down where it is that Alvin Kamara impacts this offense, the answer is yes. The answer is everywhere, right? It impacts the offensive line, the way that they block, the type of run scheme that maybe they go with. Maybe without Alvin Kamara, they go with a little bit more of a gap or a man run scheme as opposed to a zone run scheme. Everything gets impacted without Alvin Kamara. And I think that wide receiver room could potentially be impacted there as well. So as training camp begins here in just a couple of weeks, which we're going to break down the training camp schedule here in just a second, remember, you're not just watching the top 5 wide receivers or even the top 6 wide receivers. You're watching 10 wide receivers, 8 wide receivers all throughout training camp to figure out, okay, if they keep a 6th, who's that guy? And even who are the guys at 5 and 6? I think Deontay Hardy and Marquez Callaway are as close to locks as they can be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Saints aren't going to look to shake things up as they have done in the past. But with Alvin Kamara out, the Saints are going to need some more help over on the offensive side. And maybe for this year, which is a big time change from last year, wide receiver is where you find that help. Like I mentioned, a lot of this is going to be decided over the course of training camp. The New Orleans Saints officially releasing their training camp schedule, what day will everything get started, what are the key dates for you to know, and when can you attend? We're going to break all of that down as we continue on to wrap up with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with a look at the New Orleans Saints training camp schedule. Yes, it is out, and we are 14 days away, exactly 2 weeks away from when training camp will open officially, which the first practice will be on Wednesday, July 27th. It will be a non-padded practice. Remember, you can't do padded practices within the first 5 days of reporting. Veterans will report on the 26th. Of course, rookies will report on the 19th, but that acclimation period, as they call it, really begins in earnest on the 26th. So any players that report at the beginning of that period will wait until basically it would be the 26th through the 31st, effectively, or 30th. That acclimation period would go, but the acclimation period wouldn't go on beyond the 30th. So even if you don't report until the 29th, you get the acclimation period of the 29th and 30th, and then you end up with a day off before getting started with where you can start to use pads and all of these other things. Now, the first week of training camp will be July 27th through the 30th. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through week by week and all that. If you want to see the schedule, Nick Underhill put it out, I'll tweet it out. There's a whole bunch of different places. And of course, you can find everything you need over at NewOrleansSaints.com. But just know, July 27th, Wednesday, is the first day of camp. It'll be basically non-padded for the first day, helmets and shells throughout the first week. They'll get the first day off on Sunday, July 31st. Sundays will be off throughout this process. And beginning Monday, August 1st, circle it on your calendar. It's not an open practice it is actually. The first and second are both open practices for the New Orleans Saints. You should go and grab your reservations for those days free on the website, NewOrleansSaints.com, because those 2 days will be the first days of padded practices. So you're going to see some hits. You're going to see some things. Now, they're still going to take it easy, right? It's still training camp and all that, but you do see the pads cracking, the pads are popping during that time. So those are good days to be present. But basically, you get 3 weeks, the 27th through the 30th, the 1st through the 6th, and then with the Sundays off, and then the 8th through the, let me make sure I get this, the 8th through the 11th will effectively be the last day of training camp in earnest, because then you start to move into preseason practices. The Saints will travel August 12th to Houston, and then that August 13th Houston or opening preseason game will be at NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas. They'll travel to Green Bay soon after that. Actually, I don't even know that they come back to New Orleans for that. They might just go straight to Green Bay off of that. But they will do all of that before and in practice in Green Bay, they'll have some joint practices with them and everything before. So you'll get 2 joint practices. So these are other dates to kind of circle on your calendar. The August 16th, Tuesday, August 16th, and Wednesday, August 17th will be joint practices with the Green Bay Packers. So that'll be a lot of fun to watch. That's a time to keep an eye on, reporters and everybody that's going to be there. I don't think I'm traveling for those practice games. I'll find out. I haven't decided yet. For the Big next day after the preseason game against the Packers, which would be Friday, August 19th. You're going to get Saturday off. And then on Sunday, August 21st, it is practice from 3:45 to 5:45 p.m. in the Dome, helmets and shells, but it's always a fun day. It's basically like a huge fan experience, all of that. These are always fun where you're going to see, offensive linemen taking fielding punts, and you're going to see offensive linemen throwing passes, and Alvin Kamara throwing passes, and like all these other things. This is always a very, very fun day. That'll be at the Caesars Superdome. Make sure that you go and check that one out. That will be the final day of practice that will be open to the public. To fill in all of those blanks in terms of which practices are open to the public, July 30th will be the first one. That is the last day that's the last day of the first week, basically. So a good day to come in and see maybe, you're going to see like red zone work, things like that. August 1 and 2, the first days of padded practices. August 4 through 6, August 8, 10, 11, and then nothing until August 21st, because for the most part, the Saints are on the road, right? They'll go to Houston. They'll have a practice in Houston, do a walkthrough there, and then they'll, of course, have their game against the Houston Texans. Then they'll go straight to Green Bay for their practices and game against Green Bay. August 21st will be that practice in the Dome. The 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and so on will be more practices before the Saints will host the Chargers at the Mercedes-Benz. Oh, not Mercedes-Benz anymore. Sorry, the Caesars Superdome, August 26th. So that's a game, the only home game that the Saints will play in the preseason, which you'll be able to go to. That'll be at 7 p.m. Central Time. If you're looking to go to the Houston game, that will also be 7 p.m. Central Time. If you're looking to go to the Packers game, that will also be 7 p.m. Central Time. So all of those at 7 p.m. Central. So whether you're planning on going or you're planning on watching from home, those are your times for you. So that is the New Orleans Saints practice and training camp breakdown. I'm retweeting a couple of different things from folks, so you can go and find it on my Twitter page right now if you wanted to go and look at it. But yes, there is a ton of good stuff coming from this New Orleans Saints training camp, and some huge storylines to follow, whether it be position battles, how the coaching staff works out, health for players, right? What's going on with Michael Thomas? How quickly do we see him? Jameis Winston, he's got the cast off. We're seeing some great stuff from Real Supernola out there, putting out some fantastic interview videos and things like that with Jameis Winston, who is very ready to be out on the field. So there is so much to be excited about for your New Orleans Saints, as we are literally 2 weeks away now from training camp getting started in earnest. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, more New Orleans Saints getting some recognition across the NFL by players, executives, and coaches as top 10 players, including running back Alvin Kamara, who may soon be the New Orleans Saints touchdown leader all time for the franchise. How close is he? We'll break all of that down tomorrow, and we'll also get our predictions in for training camp. So make sure you let me know what your predictions are as well. We'll kind of use this Thursday and Friday, but let me know your training camp predictions for the New Orleans Saints. Who's going to be the big standout? Is there a surprise player that ends up rising to the top? Is there somebody that people aren't talking about enough, like a Lucas Kroll, for instance, coming up out of Pitt, the big tight end, right? You know what I'm saying? There's some players like that. So who are those players? Who are the people that you're really looking forward to seeing? What are the predictions that you have for this year's training camp? We're going to break all of that down here throughout the rest of the week on Locked On Saints. I appreciate you as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. For your second, make sure you go and check out Locked On NFL. Is Lamar Jackson a top 10 quarterback? That's the debate right now, and he didn't make ESPN's top 10 list as voted on by players, executives, and coaches. Tony Wiggins and James Rapine argue in favor of Lamar Jackson. So go and check that out wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. I appreciate you as always for making me a part of your day. If you see me, say hi. I will see y'all tomorrow. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, though, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how your mom and them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.